I think we can see right here that the stock center link is not straight compared to the new one. What's up guys, my name is Andy. In this video, I'm going to be replacing the center link and also the inner and outer tie rods on my 66 Mustang. Let's head over to the bench and take a look at the parts that we're going to install. What I've got here is a brand new center link, and this is for a manual steering. If you had power steering, you'd have another, I think another hole right here for the, connecting the end of the cylinder. But so manual steering center link, and then we have the inner and outer tie rods along with the adjustment sleeve. And then for both sides, and then the cotter pins that go in the end there when you're done. Did want to point out when you get these, kind of start to assemble everything, one thing to be aware of is that this has a left hand and right hand thread on it. If you go to thread it on there and it doesn't go on, you flip it around to the other way, and then you'll be able to find out which way it goes. And this is the reason, because when you spin this way or that way, it'll push out or bring in the tie rods to adjust the toe on your tires. So you want to go ahead and make sure you put the jam nut on first, and then you'll want to thread on the adjustment sleeve. And what you can do here, until we get the other parts out of the car, we're just going to go ahead and thread it, somewhere in this area, get it all the way down there, and do the same thing for the outer tie rod. And we're just going to get this thing just kind of preset up here, and when we get to the point where we're going to make the final adjustment here, we'll compare the length of this tie rod setup to the stock one's in the car now, and to get a rough estimate. So this is good enough for now. And again, if you twist this in one way or the other, it'll lengthen those or shorten those up. Also, when you get these set up, you're going to want to thread in the Zerk fittings that come with it, get them nice and tight, and then we're going to grease this up once we get it in the car and get ready to go. Please note that these are the boots for the grease on this setup here on these ball joints, and when you tighten this all down, this will kind of squish out like that and get it all set up. And you're just going to want to make sure that this is attached. There's no reason to take this apart when you're putting this in the, all together here. So just get that set up. We'll take this off when we go to assemble it with the center link, and then we'll put it back in and use a cotter pin in the end there. So let's go ahead and start getting the parts out of the car and get this ready to install. All right guys, you're going to want to go ahead and get your car safely up on some jack stands and get a wheel chock back there. And we're going to take a look at this part right here, the Pitman Arm. When you do this, before you jack the car up, it's best if you can straighten the steering wheel or straighten the wheels as best you can, just to kind of get a neutral spot when you go back to put everything together. So you're kind of in the best spot you can be before you go get an alignment, just to kind of fine tune everything. But I had recently replaced the steering shaft on my car, and I had to take the Pitman Arm off, and I had to mark on there. There's a yellow mark on here where the center was, or where it was facing forward. And so I want to make sure that's still kind of lined up, and it's kind of hard to tell in the video, but it's lined up. So that's going to give me a good indication of where I need to be when I go to put all this back together in case something gets moved. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to start on one end, take the cotter pin out, take the castle nut, get it loose, and then we're going to try a couple things. You can hit the end of this with a hammer, and sometimes that'll break it loose. Sometimes you have to get a pickle fork in there to do that. Some people don't like that because it can damage the boot, but since we're replacing this setup anyways, it doesn't matter. So we'll try hitting it first and see if it breaks it loose, and then go from there. And then on the other side, we'll do the same thing on the passenger side and take this off, take the cotter pin out, get the nut loose, break this free. And then we're going to want to break it free from the idler arm. Same thing, cotter pin, get the nut loose. And this, I recently replaced this, so this should be an easy separation between the center link and the Pitman Arm. So we hopefully don't have to fight with that. And we're going to pull this whole steering linkage out in one piece. If you were just replacing the inner and outer tie rods or the center link by itself, you'd probably want to take this apart in the car because everything's kind of held in place firmly and it makes it easier to separate. But I'm replacing the whole setup, so these joints don't need to come apart. We don't need to worry about this setup here. So we're just going to replace all of this. So let's go ahead and start getting this loose and get it taken apart. I didn't want to use the pickle fork on the idler arm because I didn't want to damage this bushing and stuff like that on here, so because we're going to reuse this piece. So let's head over to the bench and take a look at the old parts versus the new parts. So one of the things we're going to want to do is I want to make this length, you know, from the center of this here to the center of that one, the same length as that one. And the reason why is, you know, I don't remember how perfect my steering was before, you know, with the alignment, but if I replicate what I had before, at least I can get a good enough spot where I can take this to the alignment shop and then get them to, you know, fine tune everything. So what I'll do is I'll just go ahead and measure, again, the distance from here to here, set that on here, and then we can go ahead and assemble both of these tie rod assemblies to the center link. And make sure you want to get this going this way on this car versus, you know, you don't want to come in that way because it won't work. So we'll get this to set on here, and then we'll put the cotter pin and stuff in here when we get this tightened down. So let's go ahead and get this set up to length and then get this whole steering linkage set up assembled. Okay, so I've got everything, you know, roughly set up here. Everything's installed. We'll go ahead and tighten everything down once it gets in the car. But here you can see this bend here. That's definitely not right. So all right, we're going to go ahead and get this set up and get it in the car. All right, we're just going to start where we left off, and we'll put it right back on the idler arm. That was the last thing that we had done. I'll put that on here, and the washer, the castle nut. And we're just going to get everything just snug for now. We'll go back and tighten it all up in the end when everything gets installed. And next we'll do the other end of the center link into the Pitman arm. All right, next we'll just do the driver's side tie rod here while we're here. And then we'll do the passenger side. All right, now that we have everything in place, I think we can go ahead and start locking everything down and tighten it all up. We want to put the cotter pin in and everything and get all these new joints in place. On these last two, I noticed that when I put all this together and I fully seat this tie rod into the center link, when I put the castle nut on here, if I want the castle nut to do its job and be, you know, right where the cotter pin is, I've got like, I don't know, 1/8 of an inch, 3/16 of an inch of play here, and I don't think that this is supposed to be out that far. I think it's supposed to be fully seated in so you can tighten it down. So I'm going to put a couple of washers behind this castle nut. I don't think that's the wrong way because I bought this whole setup as a kit and they didn't talk about that, but you know, again, for this thing to fully seat it and be where it needs to be, this castle nut sits too far down on the threads and the cotter pin wouldn't do me any good. Now I'm going to go ahead and grease the Zerk fittings here. You could do this on the bench where it, you know, kind of oozes out here around the boot just so you know when you're done. But then it kind of makes a mess as you're putting them together, and this grease just, once you touch it, it just goes everywhere. So I figured I'd wait till I got into the car to install it. So you're just going to need a normal, you know, just a grease gun. Anything like this will work. There's lots of different styles out there and fittings and everything that you need to make sure you get the right ones. And so we'll just go ahead and pump some grease in here, and again, when we see it start coming out of that boot, then we know that we're done. There we go, you can see it oozing right there. Perfect. So that one's done, and then we'll go do the rest of them. These ones were packed pretty good, the inner tie rods. I went ahead and just did one pump on there, and then it went ahead and pushed some of the grease that was already in there, so that's good. We just want to make sure that they are greased. All right, and that one's done. Coming out the side here. So when you take these off, they're kind of sticky. Once you go ahead and get a rag and just wipe everything off and everything clean, then you'll be good to go.
So the last thing I'm going to want to do is, before I drop the car, is just kind of do an eyeball test and make sure that this setup, that the tire looks straight. Now with the car up in the air, you know, this tire's drooping on the suspension stuff, the tire's not going to be exactly where it's going to be when it sits on the ground. But what you're looking for is making sure that the tire's not grossly out of alignment, that you didn't do something seriously wrong. You know, you can leave these jam nuts loose and just kind of twist these a little bit just to kind of fine tune it. But really, you know, as long as you made the same length as the other one, you should be all right, enough to get you to the alignment store. All right, guys, I want to point out I intentionally left the jam nuts on those adjustment sleeves loose. What I'm going to do is I'm going to back the car out and back it back in, just kind of let the suspension kind of settle and get happy to where it normally is, so the tires are where they're going to be, and then I can just do kind of a final last eyeball, make sure that the tires are straight. You could always measure it out and everything, and if you know how to do an alignment yourself, you're in a better place. I'm going to take a 2 alignment shot, just make sure they get everything perfect, and then go from there. So guys, that's how you do that. That's a new tie rods, new center link in a 66 Mustang, and I think you guys could do it again. The pickle fork thing versus using the hammer, some people don't like to use that. I'm replacing all the components, so it wasn't really going to damage anything that I needed to keep. So I think we're okay there. But you guys can do what you want to do. I kind of struggled with that hammer thing, so the pickle fork was what I needed to do. So guys, that's it. If you liked the video, give me a thumbs up. And if you subscribe, I appreciate it because it helps my channel out. And we'll see you in the next one.